Welcome to 21st Sports Recap and Reaction for the Washington Redskins at the Chicago Bears in their Week 14 matchup played December 13th, 2015. And so the Redskins came into this game and needed to win to stay tied for first place in the NFC East, and the Bears need a win to have any chance of possibly making a wild card, even though that was a long shot. But the Redskins had not won a road game all year long, so they were looking to change that in this game, and they started off on their first possession with a scoring drive, which started on their own 20 after a touchback on the opening kickoff, and they would march down the field. They got up to midfield. They were faced with a 3rd and 12 from their own 42, and Kirk Cousins hooked up with Ross for a 17-yard reception that made a first down at the 41, the Chicago 41. Cousins then scrambled for 9 yards, and then Morris ran for 4 yards to make it a first down at the Chicago 28. Then on 3rd and 3 from the 21, Morris picked up 5 yards on the ground to make it a first down in the red zone at the 16. Then on 2nd and 12 from the 18, Kirk Cousins went to Jordan Reed for the touchdown, but then it ended up being reversed and ruled that he was down at the 1-yard line. So then on 1st and goal from the 1, Alfred Morris punches it in from a yard out. Dustin Hopkins adds the extra point, and it was 7-0 Redskins over the Bears with about 6.5 minutes still left to play in the first. So now the Bears would get the ball for the first time in this game. They would end up punting after 5 plays. So now Washington would take over backed up against their own end zone on their own 7-yard line with about 2.5 minutes still left in the first. They were faced with a 3rd and 1 on the 16. Cousins then put it ahead for 2 yards for the first down at the 18-yard line. Then on 2nd and 10 from the 18, Cousins with the Crowder. He picked up 13 yards in the first down at the 31. And then on 1st and 10 from the 31, an incomplete pass, but a interference call against the defense would make it a first down on the Chicago 37. Cousins then went to Jordan Reed. He picked up 28 and a first down in the red zone at the Chicago 9-yard line as the first quarter came to a close. So now the Redskins would open up the second quarter with a 1st and goal on the 9. Cousins went to Reed. He picked up 6, and then Cousins would end up taking it in himself for a 3-yard touchdown run, and Hopkins added the extra point, and it was 14-0 Washington over Chicago. And that was less than a minute into the second quarter. So now the Bears would take over after the kickoff, and a penalty would push them back to their own 7-yard line as they were backed up against their own end zone. But they would end up getting out of the shadow of their end zone. They brought the ball up to midfield and into Washington territory, where they had a 1st and 10 at the Washington 39. And then Jay Cutler was sacked by Murphy. He forced the fumble and recovered. And so the Redskins would take over after the fumble, but they would go 3 and out on the possession that followed. And so now the Bears would get the ball back, but they would punt after 6 plays. And then the Redskins would go 3 and out for the second consecutive possession. And now the Bears would get the ball with just over a minute left before halftime with it on their own 42. A penalty would push them back. But then on 3rd and 8 from the Chicago 44, Jay Cutler went to Thompson. He picked up 36 yards and a first down in the red zone at the Washington 20. Then on 2nd and 10 after an incomplete pass, Jay Cutler went to Alshon Jeffery for a 20-yard touchdown. Robbie Gould added the extra point, and it was 14-7 as the Bears cut the Redskins' lead to 7 right before halftime. Cousins would take a knee after the kickoff, and this game went to half, so 14-7 at the half. And then to start things off in the second half, the Bears would get the ball first, but the Redskins would hold them to a 3 and out. And so now Washington would take over after the punt on their own 38. And on 2nd and 10 from the 38, Cousins went to Jordan Reed. He picked up 32 yards to the first down at the Chicago 30. And then on 3rd and 2 from the 22, Matt Jones ends up picking up a couple yards. And now it's first down at the Chicago Bears 20, right there in the red zone. Jones then ran for 8 yards in the first down, or actually 2nd and 2 at the 12, but then he ran for 3 yards for the first down to make it 1st and goal at the 9. Jones then ran for 6 yards to make it 2nd and goal at the 3, and then on 3rd and goal, there ended up being a penalty for a delay of game, which pushed them back to the 5-yard line. Cousins then went to Jordan Reed for the touchdown. Hopkins added the extra point, and it was now 21-7 as the Redskins were up by 2 scores with 8 minutes still left in the third. So it looked like they were about to run away with this one, but the Bears had other ideas as they would take over on their own 20 after the touchback on the kickoff, and they wasted no time getting up to midfield, and they got into Washington territory down into the red zone, and on 3rd and 2 from the 9, Jay Cutler went to Zach Miller, and he scored with a 9-yard touchdown reception. Gould added the extra point, and it was now a 1-score game with the score 21-14, with the Redskins still in the lead by 7 now. So now Washington would take over on their own 9-yard line after a holding penalty on the kickoff. So backed up against their own end zone, and on 2nd and 8 from the 11, Cousins was intercepted by Kyle Fuller. And so now the Bears would take over at the Washington 21 after the interception. And Matt Forte ran for 4 yards, then he ran for 10 yards, and that made it 1st and goal at the 7, and Forte ran 7 yards into the end zone. Gould hit the extra point, and this game was tied up at 21 apiece with a minute and a half still left in the third. So it had been 14-0, and it had been 21-7, but now the Bears were tied up with just a minute and a half left to play in the third. And the Redskins would get the ball after the touchback on the kickoff. They would end up bringing the third quarter to a close as they got into Chicago territory, as Cousins had connected with Deshaun Jackson for a 29-yard pass that brought the ball from the 36 of Washington to the 35 of Chicago. And then a 4-yard run would lose 4 yards on the run that would bring the third quarter to a close as they opened up the fourth quarter. And their drive would stall at the 29, and out would come Dustin Hopkins to attempt a 47-yard field goal less than a minute into the fourth quarter. It was up, it was good, and now the Redskins were up 24-21. So now the Bears would take over after the field goal, and they would go 3 and out as the Redskins defense came up big on the possession. But then the Bears defense would force the Redskins to punt after 6 plays. So now Chicago would take over, but after 7 plays, they would have to punt the ball back to the Redskins, who now would take over with about 6 minutes left, backed up against their own end zone on their own 8-yard line. But they would end up eating up about 4 minutes of game clock as they would actually bring the ball into Chicago territory, but their drive stalled on the Chicago 41, and so they would end up punting the ball back to the Bears with about 2 minutes left to play. So it's a 3-point game. The Bears have the ball now on their own 20 with over 2 minutes left to play, just over 2 minutes left to play. They would get called for a false start, though, and that would push them back to the 15. But on 1st and 15 from the 15, Jay Cutler went to Alshon Jeffery, picked up 50 yards and a first down to Washington 35. And so Forte ran at 3 yards, and this game went to the 2-minute warning. So now coming out of the 2-minute warning, it was 2nd and 7 at the 32. An incomplete pass would bring up 3rd and 7, and an incomplete pass would bring up 4th and 7. And so they would bring out Robbie Gould to attempt a 50-yard field goal to tie this game with about a minute 45 left to play, and it was no good. So Gould misses the field goal to tie it, and now Washington would take over, and they would run out the clock as Matt Jones, although he only picked up 3 yards and then got stuffed for no gain. Then on 3rd and 7, with less than a minute left to play, they give it back to Jones. He picks up 8 and the first down, and that would be all she wrote as the game clock would come to, it would end up ticking off after that, and this game came to a close. So the Washington Redskins hold on to win this one by a field goal. They win their first road game in 2015, and they're now 6-7 as the Eagles also won. So they're tied with the Eagles still. Of course, the Giants are going to be playing the Dolphins on Monday Night Football, so we'll be looking to see what happens in that game. But with the Cowboys losing, they're all but done, but the Redskins are still right there in the mix, tied for first place in the NFC East. And the Bears at 5-8, they're pretty much eliminated, and they're 1-6 at home. They're actually the opposite of the Redskins, whereas the Redskins have won 1 road game. This was their first road win. The Bears had only won 1 home game heading into today, and they did not change that as they continue to struggle at Soldier Field. But in this game, Kirk Cousins, 300 passing yards, 24 for 31, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. He also had a rushing touchdown, giving him 2 total touchdowns on the day. So he had 4 carries for 13 yards. Matt Jones, 18 carries for 62 yards in this game. He also had 2 receptions for 24 yards, which gave him 86 total yards on the day. And Jordan Reed, 9 receptions for 120 yards and a touchdown. Pierre Garçon with 5 catches for 52 yards. Deshaun Jackson, 2 catches for 43 yards. Of course, they came at clutch moments, though. And for the Bears, Jay Cutler, 19 of 31, 315 passing yards, 2 touchdowns. And then Matt Forte, 10 carries for 45 yards and a touchdown. He also had 1 catch for 8 yards, which gave him 53 total yards on the day. And then Alshon Jeffery, 6 receptions for 170 yards and a touchdown. Zach Miller, 5 receptions for 85 yards and a touchdown. And for the kickers in this game, Dustin Hopkins was perfect, 1 for 1 on the field goals, 3 for 3 on the extra points. And Robbie Gould was 3 for 3 on the extra points, but he was 0 for 1 on the field goals. So he missed the 50-yarder that could have tied the game, but it would not. And so then we look at the defense, and Ryan Kerrigan had a sack for Washington, as did Knighton and Murphy. Murphy also forced the fumble. And for the Bears, Houston had a sack, as did Unrain and Young, and Kyle Fuller with that interception. We look at the team stats, 24 first downs for Washington, 24 Chicago. And then on the third down, 7 for 12 for the Redskins, 58% conversion rate. 5 for 11 for the Bears, 45% conversion rate. Total net yards in this game, 377 for the Bears, 374 for the Redskins. On the ground, Washington netted 99 yards, Chicago netted 87 yards. And through the air, the Bears netted 290. Cutler sacked 3 times, losing 25 yards. And for the Redskins, they netted 275 through the air, as Cousins was sacked 3 times also for 25 yards lost. We look at the penalty yards in this game, 8 penalty yards against the Redskins for 63 yards, 7 penalties against the Bears for 79 yards. Both teams had 1 fumble. The Redskins recovered their fumble, and they recovered the Bears' fumble. And then we look at the red zone, 3 for 3 in the red zone for Washington, 2 for 2 for Chicago. And then in the time of possession, 34 minutes, 22 seconds for the Redskins, 25 minutes, 38 seconds for the Bears. So the Redskins, they jumped out to that early lead. It looked like they had this one well in hand. Of course, then the Bears end up getting that score right before halftime. But then to open things up in the second half, the Redskins go back up by 2 scores. But the Bears battled back. They wouldn't lie down, and they tied this game up. And then the Redskins closed it out, though. They get that field goal, and then their defense clamped down, and that was something that they had struggled with earlier in the year, especially on the road, was closing games out. But they closed this one out, and that's a good sign for the Redskins. Of course, Washington, they had a big loss last week, but they come right back in a big win. And this division is still wide open. It's anybody's to win. But the Redskins sitting in a pretty place. They're in a prime position to take the East. And of course, getting this big road win is just something that they desperately needed, as they had not won a game on the road. But the way their defense played down the stretch in this game, especially in the fourth quarter, is a good sign for the Redskins, as that's what they're going to need to carry them to the division title. Of course, the Giants and the Eagles have something to say about that, so we'll see how it plays out in the final 3 weeks of the season. Also, we'll see what happens on Monday Night Football with the Giants, if we still have a 3-way tie in first in the East, or if it's just a 2-way tie with the Eagles and the Redskins. But either way, it's going to be exciting to see how it all shapes out. And the Bears, give them credit. They're a team that early on it looked like they'd kind of given up on the seasons. They dumped some of their key players, and they also had some big injuries. But then they seemed to get things, things kind of came together there. Of course, John Fox, his teams are well coached. And although it's been a rough year, they've definitely got some good signs, things to build on for the future moving forward. And we'll see what happens in the offseason. But they're moving towards next year. And like I said, they've got things that they're building on the Redskins, even below 500, they have a chance to win their division. As the Bears wish they were in the NFC East the way things are going over there. But in this game, Washington coming up with a huge road victory. Like I said, their first one of the year, they desperately needed it. And Kirk Cousins coming up big on the road. As you've seen, he's played some phenomenal games in Washington, at home there. But he needed to do it on the road. And especially, that the Redskins are going to be on the road in the playoffs. Of course, they'll get the one home game as the division winner. Even if they are below 500, they will host a game. But if they manage to win a game, if they end up winning the division, it could very well be the Giants or the Eagles. And even, mathematically, it's possible the Cowboys still are alive. But either way, if they're going to go anywhere, or whoever it is in the East is going to have to win some road games. So there's definitely something that they needed to do. And although the Bears aren't, necessarily, they're not a contender really, but they still are a tough team. Every team in the NFL is a tough team regardless of their record. I mean, these are the best football players in the world. But let me know what you think in the comments section below. Definitely interested to read your thoughts and opinions. Thank you very much for listening. It's greatly appreciated. I hope you're having a good day and having a great weekend and enjoying all the sports.